But welcome to our talk on reducing tech debt and increasing performance. We're going to provide a case study in automation, as Annie said today. My name is Alex Viale. This is Dan Toombs. But before I get into introductions, formal introductions, I just wanted to touch on a recent survey that I came across by McKinsey last year that touches on the importance of tech debt and how automation can help. So a number of CEOs were polled, CIOs rather, in the financial and tech industries about tech debt, and they found that around 20% on average of allocation of resources that are directed to developing new products actually wind up getting redirected to then address tech debt. So you can imagine, as a larger company, that can be hundreds of millions of dollars, and so it has massive implications for making sure you're staying on top of your tech debt and reducing that in any way you can. I'm going to skip ahead here to a quote by one of those CIOs who started to wrangle this problem, had a big problem, and kind of got it under control. He says, by reinventing our debt management, we went from 75% of engineering time paying tech debt tax to 25%. It allowed us to be who we are today. So I think it really speaks to the importance of the topic. So maybe quick audience participation. I know tech debt is probably something everyone's familiar with, but who is impacted in some way today by tech debt in your organization? Directly or indirectly? Yeah, wow. quite a few.
Lots of people.
Just about everybody. So yeah, an important topic. And now for some more formal introductions. Again, my name is Alex Viale. I'm the Director of Product Management for Workflow and Automation at Appfire. I've been in the UX and product management field for 15 plus years, probably more than I care to admit. I'm certified in Agile Scrum, product-led growth, and maybe most relevant to today, I've actually been a former Jira admin, for better or worse, and felt some of the pains that I think Dan is going to share with us today. So I have some empathy for what you're going through, man.
Thank you.
Just real quick on Appfire. Appfire was founded in 2005 as one of the original partners of Atlassian. We're very proud of that. From the very beginning, our mission is really to help teams customize their tools so they can work better together. So forward to 2023, and the mission is still the same. You can check us out at appfire.com or come talk to me after, and I'd be happy to share any information about us. Now on to the star of the show, again, Dan Toombs. Dan is from Inmarsat, an international satellite communications company. Dan is an Atlassian architect who has consulted in the field for a number of years, mostly with Jira of all flavors, as well as Confluence. Dan's going to talk today about reducing tech debt through automation, but he also uses automation to help teams adopt tools and really improve the efficiency by which they work. So, welcome, Dan.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so I'm Dan Toombs. I've been in the Atlassian ecosystem for about 7 years. The first 4 of those years were actually at a solution partner, where I managed to kind of really get to grips and learn Jira at the time, specifically, really, really well. I was lucky to actually get trained as one of their consultants and got certified with my ACPs. But since then, so for the last 3 years, I've been working with end users of Atlassian, so the end customers. So I've really been able to see the challenges from both sides.
Yeah. So you've had that consultant lens, now you're on the customer side, you're an Atlassian architect, you get questions from everywhere.
Yeah.
Not the easiest of jobs. But can you tell us a little bit about your responsibilities right now?
Yeah, of course. So my main job, my main first and foremost point that I need to do is always keep Atlassian running. So like a lot of people in this room, Atlassian applications will be business critical. So we always need to make sure that even from the smallest access issue right up to the major incidents, that everything is running as smoothly as possible. But when we're not doing that as a team, we're proactively looking for where we can make those improvements, reducing tech debt, bringing new functionality to our end users. In this day and age, we cannot stand still, so we always have to look for where we can make improvements. We are made up of 5 cloud sites, a data center site, and a server, which I still don't know what to do with, but we'll get there eventually. And the reason why we have that is our company is split up into major business units, all of which are kind of different regulations and different standards. We have to make sure that we can comply everywhere. But across all of them, we are software, business and operational teams, and project teams. So, real big mix.
Yeah, quite a mix. So many locations, different business units. I'm imagining all kinds of different requirements that teams come at you with. So you're responsible for helping them, but also maintaining and scaling what you need to scale. What are some of the common challenges you face?
The biggest one right now is probably regulatory requirements. That can be as simple as who can access the data or where that data lives, or it could actually impact you in terms of how you design your processes or the applications to run. The regulatory requirements can change, so we need to make sure that we are always compliant. Another big one, especially at the moment with the server end of life fast approaching for a few of us, I'm sure, migrations, they're a tricky thing anyway, and they are made much worse with tech debt. Things like scripts, over-reliance on certain apps, or just config that doesn't always compute in the cloud. So, we always need to make sure that we're taking care of that as much as possible. But finally, I think the most important challenge, which you see on day-to-day, is that tug-of-war between the flexibility of providing the functionality the end users actually want, and then managing that long term. It's a very fine line between the right and the wrong. Yeah. As a former Jira admin myself, I felt that tug of war, much smaller scale than I think you're dealing with, but it seems, as you said, every team comes to you with questions and ways they want to work, and help me do that, Dan, but at the same time, you have to maintain and scale this. And so difficult challenges, all made more difficult by tech debt. Tech debt's a term we hear a lot. It means different things to different people, potentially. So how do you define tech debt? For me, I would say that tech debt is anytime you're building reliance on people, skills, code languages, third-party marketplace apps, not just in the Atlassian ecosystem, but elsewhere. It could also be, carrying on legacy systems or legacy data. Anything that's increasing the risk of something going wrong. We have to always look for the future. That's what we have to do. So, whenever the maintenance of something outweighs the actual costs of what you get from it, you're in debt to that system. So we need to make sure that we're always on top. I mean, one of the things that you may have seen from a few years ago is that video that kind of went viral on social media about how your life can be a jar. And if you fill it with all the golf ball sized items of, the complicated things, you leave little room for some of the still enjoyment, but from the smaller items as well. So imagine your Atlassian environment is that glass jar. You only have so much room and so much that you can look after. No matter the size of the team, there's still a limit. So if you constantly fill it with large, complicated items that carry more debt, you leave little room for all of the other things that your users still want. So, what we're about is trying to remove some of those large items. Yeah, I love the analogy. And earlier, we touched on, why tech debt matters from the McKinsey study and some of the impact there. In your words, why does tech debt matter? Why is it so important for you? It makes, as I mentioned, it makes everything harder to manage. It makes everything more time-consuming, more resourceful. We need to put more in to get it. And with everything having a cost, we have to take that away from somewhere else. I mean, the survey results that you showed up earlier, they showed a 50% reduction in an engineer's time in terms of where their focus was. So being able to give that back to the engineer to provide more functionality for the end users that they want, the actual things they're asking for, or providing performance improvements to make their lives easier is also a huge thing. Another thing from a business perspective, every business wants to decrease the risk. So, removing the reliance on individuals and playing the proverbial thing is what happens if, the important people, left the company or got hit by a bus or whatever. You need to accommodate for those situations. Having a modern environment where you are limited with the amount of legacy things you're taking through, makes a business more attractive to work for, and also you're reducing the friction between environments, so your customer experience is much better. Yeah, and I think one thing that the McKinsey survey hinted at, but didn't necessarily call out exactly, but if you're focusing 20, 25, whatever % of your efforts on tech debt,
I have a product background, so I think about the customer and delivering value constantly to the customer. And so that's this friction of I want to build value to the customer, but we have to get in and do some tech debt, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of the battle that we face. How do you, $1 million question here, right? How does Dan, how do you reduce tech debt?
You have to proactively scan your environments. So you have to actually, give time and spend that time wisely to always looking for wherever you can and making those. But not only just finding them, still dedicating the time to fix them and not just call that out. I mean, developers are actively encouraged to scan their code and find improvements, reuse components or whatever it is. We have to also take the same for the applications that we use in them. Rewriting scripts using low-code, no-code alternatives is also a really good way of reducing tech debt because you're removing some of that reliance. Reusing config or standards across any application. But I think one really key one is probably still about training and support. We have to educate as many users as possible to strengthen the team, broaden who can look after things, and get a really good support network with marketplace vendors in this case, where we need to always have the opportunity to fall back and ask more questions with support.
Great. So you touched on the importance of low code, no code automation. We're on stage here because you're a user of one of Appfire's apps, JSU, or Automation Suite for Jira, that we'll get to in just a second. But can you say a little bit more about what's so important about no code, low code automation these days?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's huge, and it's something that I think we've seen go from strength to strength in the Atlassian ecosystem as well as outside for everywhere else. Gartner actually projected back in 2021 that no-code, low-code automation applications were providing a 23% increase in productivity. So that's a quarter of your time that you can be more productive or increase productivity due to it. So I think any chance we get to remove the technical debt from scripts that require code knowledge or code language skills, or maybe even reducing increasing the number of people that can look after things, because they're geared to more like if then that kind of statements and more people can look after it, it removes the reliance on individuals. And I think it's important to say that just because it may be easier to understand, it doesn't mean it's any less powerful. No-code automations can still be incredibly useful, and because of all those things, you tend to be able to produce more, so more work is completed faster.
Yeah, great. So just a quick plug for JSU by Appfire, as we're going to talk more in depth about it, but it is an entirely code-free automation solution for Jira that works alongside of native Jira. It's highly regarded. We're very proud by Jira admins in the network because of its ease of use, speed to get set up, and intuitive interface. And it has a lot of flexible workflow extensions. So that's all I'll say about it. If you want to learn more, come talk to me or check us out in the marketplace. Now, JSU alongside automation for Jira, native automation, it's a question that comes up. You use both together in a complementary way to reduce tech debt. How do they play together?
Really, really well, actually. Sometimes you can see friction between the two, but we tend to see that actually they work very, very well together. We have in-house kind of a decent rule that kind of helps us with that as well, which is we will tend to use native automation, so the A4J stuff, from things like where you need certain triggers like off of custom field data or schedules or things like that. But anywhere where we have a predefined action, so going from status A to status B, and you're always doing those actions, we would always use JSU in that case. It's easier to make sure that we keep all of that kind of items together in workflow post functions or whatever, but it makes it easier to manage, maintain in the long run, because if something does happen, and from time to time it does, it's one place to look. We know what, a ticket was going through from A to B, and we know where to look to try and find whatever that issue was. So I think it's really important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So obviously, we're not the only solution to help people automate and improve their efficiency and reduce tech debt. prior to bringing JSU on to your company, you were using let's call it a script-heavy solution that you actually replaced with Appfire's JSU. Can you say a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course. So we were more script heavy. That was just kind of, again, a legacy thinking. We're a team of developers, and at heart it was easy just to pump in and go straight with the scripts. But long term, it started causing performance issues, especially when we had the amount we did on server, and obviously migrating it made it even harder. So one of the first things we did is to try and reduce it. So we brought on JSU and obviously had some of the A4J stuff as well. And by doing that, we actually removed about 98% of the scripts, which not only gave us more time back from maintaining all those scripts, but we actually found that we were able to increase the number of automations that we were able to look after for the same amount of debt, effectively, the same time for that management, because we moved a lot of things to no-code automations or easier things to get to learn.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And at my previous company, I was a small company, and I was a product guy, and I became the default Jira admin, and I can't code, and there's a lot of people that are very grateful that I don't. But I was able to use no-code automation to really solve a lot of pains for myself as a Jira admin there.
Yeah,
so.
Absolutely.
Automation in action. So in case anybody's wondering in the audience, what's an example of automation that may help me reduce some debt? And I think you have an example here for us.
I do, yes. So the backstory for this one was one of our dev teams came to us. Their backlog, and I'm sure they probably aren't the only ones, had a right mixture of of healthy tickets. So they're healthy requests. They were noticing they were getting loads more requests from the external teams for their resources, but those user stories weren't always in a good place. So they had to find a way of trying to manage it better. They did have a script that was running in the background, which would add a field to add data to a custom field, but it was kind of more about, does this field have data in, yes or no? So it wasn't, helping them entirely. So we kind of helped them out, and we kind of split away not only just their actual agile processes in terms of how they run as a team, but we also tried to improve some of the way that they can gatekeep at those requests coming into the team for a start. So we split them out and made it easier. So tackling the requests coming in order to get better tickets, well-defined tickets that the engineers were actually able to break down and go with, we made them a JSM portal form where they could designate all the fields that they wanted on that form straight away. So it made sure that all the data was captured, due dates, priorities, whatever it was. They were able to get the information they needed. Still on the request, we then helped them with the workflow that you see up there. Everything would go into backlog, and then when the ceremonies would come around, they were able to move it to review and instantly decide of 3 routes. Do we need more information and push it back to the customer? Do we need to put it on hold because of certain other actions, maybe other projects going on, or can we give it a resolution? If it was declined, we were immediately able to then post a new comment onto the ticket using the post functions from JSU. And again, it helped standardize because the teams were able to just click a button and the system would take care of the rest, and it also helped with uniformity. But if it was accepted, we would then move it from kind of that requests area into the team's actual software project using the create a linked issue post function. And to, again, create the transparency, not only with the link, but we copied all that vital data into their backlog. So when it came to them actually developing the work and going through those sprint planning sessions and everything else, they knew if it was in their backlog, it was in a healthy state, they were committed to actually doing that request, and it helped with kind of the separation there.
Yeah, I mean, that's pure gold. I mean, centralizing an input, making sure that the input is standardized and what the teams need. I can speak from experience of just the amount of back and forth of, can you add this, can you add that, can you clarify this? It's a real huge time saving, so I'm imagining you're seeing some of that in the results?
Yeah, absolutely. So the team came back to us pretty quickly and noticed that they were, on average, over the 6 weeks that it took to get the feedback, they were noticing about an hour and a half saved per engineer. That was not necessarily all coming from the ceremonies and the improvements they had in the ceremonies, with better groomed tickets or easier stand-ups and that kind of stuff. But it came from the actual work itself. Because they had more better defined tickets, they weren't spending time with the to and the fro and everything else. and there were just less distractions taking them away. So that's 90 minutes back to the engineers, which they can then do with what they love, which is to either write code or do whatever they needed to in their agile team. So we kind of really helped all across, clean backlogs, the reliance, but it made the team feel far more in control.
Yeah, that's great. That's a good feeling. I mean, and it's not only helping that team, but also the teams that are submitting these issues, because their back and forth is reduced, and they start to understand how the process works.
Yeah,
so it's
better transparency everywhere.
Yeah, that's great. So amazing example of just one very simple no-code automation. The ripple effects are obvious, I think, through the teams. So great, thank you for sharing that. So you've shared a lot of good insights already in the short time with us. If someone from the audience comes to you later and says, Dan, I need help. How can I reduce tech debt? What's your advice? What are some takeaways that you might have?
I have three kind of big things that I would always say. The first is that as an admin, you are in control. You have an obligation that if something doesn't feel right, you have that obligation to say no, and you should be. You should be working with the team to find the solution, but you can't just accept blanketly what the request is. You have to find something that is going to provide the user experience they're looking for, but in a scalable, maintainable way for you. And I think that's really, really important. You have to push back. I think the second is look for where you can maybe take some of the debt out with low-code, no-code automations. Can we reduce the debt, and the reliance on certain code languages with less scripting? We can spread the load with no-code automations. We can delegate out to project admins or other people that can also create those. So with more people, the work is done faster, and we don't have to worry so much about other areas. I don't want to ever put anybody off automating. We should always automate where possible, but you have to bear in mind and build with scale in mind. And I think finally is that bespoke versus maintenance feel. So how much do we want to just give the free rein to the individuals and allow them to have and work in the way they want to? But also just thinking again with, we've got to maintain this as admins and things like that. So it's a really fine line. And it will be different for every one of you in this room, for those that are the admins, and you have to kind of work out where you feel comfortable, where that line is. But we can always reuse and reduce with config and other things. So we need to find that kind of area.
Yeah, great advice. Great advice. I think you might have a lot of conversations after this talk here. So yeah, and one of my favorites is just the admin's ability to push back, because I think in past experiences I found that if each team has their own methods and tools, workflows to do things, people tend to move around teams, and then they find that they're in a situation that they're not familiar with, and they're not sure how to work within that. So you're helping people kind of standardize across it in that way too. So thank you, and I'm just going to go on to one more thing before we get on to a few questions, maybe from the audience. Just one more plug for Appfire's suite of automation tools. We've touched a lot on JSU today, and the quick start, baseline foundation automation that you can get out of JSU. We also have JMWE, which is a combination of no-code and low-code that really starts to get you into more powerful customizations within your automation. And then for those that are familiar with scripting and want to go down that path, you can really get to some deeper levels of automation through PowerScript. So check us out again in the marketplace, or come talk to us later. And let's open it up for questions. I think we have a traveling microphone here somewhere.
Hello. Do you hear me now?
Yes.
Good. We have already, or we use already both PowerScript and the GSU. The thing is, if we want to go and not write too much scripts in our company, it doesn't work for us with GSU because we cannot copy the assets field. In our company, we use assets to 100% in Jira Service Management. And when we moved from data center to cloud, we get to a big challenge. There we cannot copy these assets, actually. And This, for us, for example, if I use automation for Jira, today I can do it, but the problem with automation for Jira, you can click, you need to change from status to status. You cannot build it as a transition on the same status.
Okay.
So I must use the GSU, actually. But at the same time, these functionalities that we lost when we moved to cloud, it was a big things for us. Is there any things, for example, that you think we can do, or if Appfire want to implement this in future, near future?
Yeah, I mean, I can say, so I know our product managers are listening to this and taking feverish notes as you're speaking about some of the challenges. So, thank you for sharing that. I think one of the things we're looking at really hard right now is trying to make, at the very least, value parity between DC and cloud. And so the capabilities that you have on DC that we're really striving to have those and more on cloud, so that people are comfortable migrating without some use cases that don't work. But if you want to dive a little bit deeper on the side, I'm happy to talk to you about your specific case.
Thank you.
Sure. I don't know, anything to add on that one, Dan, in your experience there?
No, just looking at there are alternative low-code, no-code apps out there. I would just try. I mean, you mentioned about A4J. There are ways of looking for specific transitions. So we can try, but again, we can have that discussion away, and maybe we can run through some stuff in a bit.
Thanks for the question.
Yeah.
Thought I saw a couple other hands go up.
Yeah.
Thank you. So we are still on data center as well, and we are using A4J heavily. The thing that troubles us with these low-code or no-code solutions is moving from one stage to another, like from dev to test to prod, yeah? Transporting after we tested or after we developed. Do you have a good solution for that? Because right now we don't have a good workflow, and not at all an fully automated workflow for that. But we would love to have it.
Okay, so an environment challenge going from one environment to the next. Do you come across this at all, Dan? I'm curious your take.
The kind of when we're developing an automation, if we are developing it on like a dev platform or things like that. I mean, is you talking about like the A4J rules specifically, or?
Yeah, migrating A4J rules, from one instance to another, yeah.
So with we can mass export as a global admin. You can obviously export those rules, or if you're doing it as a project admin, you can do individual ones. Work with your admin to get them obviously imported again. There are some downsides of trying to do that. Obviously, if you're looking at particular statuses, the IDs will change. But it's a good way of kind of understanding the actual functionality and getting the statement in the right way. Unfortunately, there are just some limitations with A4J.
Right.
In terms of the IDs, you'll always need to redo those at the moment.
Okay. Yeah. The IDs is exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That is what we use in Configuration Manager, for example, another plugin. They handle that automatically. Yeah. Unfortunately, they don't transport A4J rules. So we're stuck with that. And I thought maybe you JSU had support for Configuration Manager maybe, or had an own solution for transporting?
Let me make sure I get you the right answer afterwards, but again, I think, and I'm happy to field other requests for people that we can create a backlog for our product team. Lots of opportunities there, I'm sure, so.
Thank you.
I think we have time for another.
Yeah.
Hi. This is again a migration question. We are on the verge of migrating, projects from server to data center. So we have a scenario where a lot of custom scripts from the script runner or in the workflow post functions, and also certain things related to the JSU as well. Those automations are also configured in the source instance workflow. So the problem we are having is basically when we migrate the project using Configuration Manager, the entire configurations comes into the instance, everything works fine, that's fine. But still, the workflow which is migrated, right? All the post functions and the scripts which are in the source are not automatically transferred, right? Even though I'm not sure if this is the difference between script runner between source and script runner in data center. But what we need to do is we need to go through each and every post function step and just recreate the scripts as well as JSU conditions, whatever it's in there. Now, for 1 or 2 workflows, it's okay, we do that. But if you're talking about 20, 40 workflows or something like that, it's kind of a pain. So do you have any suggestions of handling these kind of scenarios?
Are they script runner scripts? Or are they power scripts, sorry?
Script runners, these are like Groovy scripts. Actually.
Yeah, no, is that the app that you're referring to, though? I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. They can be challenging. They can be whenever you're doing migrations, and like you say, there are always challenges when trying to move scripts and things. There's no real kind of suggestion I've got right now. I would always try and look to see whether or not those scripts are, first of all, even required anymore. You know, are they providing the functionality that you originally intended with them? Can you change them into something easier to manage and maintain going forward with like A4J rules or JSU post functions and things? Or if they're just redundant, then there's one less thing you need to migrate. So I think the first thing is always just actually understanding your environment and seeing what you can get rid of. If you do make that decision, you need to move, then working through that test, you might find some areas. But again, we can have that discussion in a bit, and maybe we can work out an easier way for you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks a lot. I
Perfect.
think we're
I
at
think
time.
we're out of time.
But I just want to please join me in a round of applause for Dan Toombs from Inmarsat for joining us today.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much.